Hello, everybody. Meteorologist Hutch Johnson joining you. We now have Hurricane Francine. That's right. You heard me right. Winds have reached 74 miles per hour. And by definition, we now have a hurricane. The latest from the National Hurricane Center. Your forecast and a look at some models and risks as this storm system makes its way toward the Gulf Coast by the time we get into your Wednesday. Let's get started right now. Here's a look at that radar, and what we're looking at is future radar here. You see the clear, defined eye of the storm as it works its way to the north and east. But here's a track of the storm as it made its way into the Gulf Coast off of areas near Cancun and kind of just meandered across the western regions up the Gulf. Now organized, and you see the little one icon there. Let's take you in right close and personal. That is the latest on active Hurricane Francine. Winds sustained at 74 miles per hour. Motion is basically only 10 miles per hour to the north and east as it works its way in the general direction. The cone that you see here, by the way, is the official National Hurricane Center cone of uncertainty. Now, the most likely path, as shown by this cone, will be right down the center of it, but it could deviate a little to the right, a little to the left, and that leaves some room for error as we go through, with the most likely landfall basically on the shoreline here when we look down in Louisiana from around Crawley and just south of Baton Rouge near Morgan City, and not far from New Orleans as we see the storm center's white lines here. That's the cone of uncertainty. This is a forecast model called the model blend, and it's basically taking into account several models and averaging them. So we're going to look at a couple of different details here, but let's start with a look at the timing, close and personal. Notice if you are in Texas, the main shoreline that will see some impacts from this is going to be Galveston and on towards Beaumont. But because of the way this system is oriented, we're going to see more of an offshore flow here. Now, because the winds will be blowing offshore, that impacts caused by that storm surge or that wave height that will be reduced because of those winds coming off the shore. So that's some good news there, but expect abundant amounts of rainfall in this area. Zooming back out, Lake Charles, you'll have some showers and thunderstorms as we go into the 2 a.m. time frame tonight, with the winds increasing, particularly in and around the eye wall is where we're measuring those 74 mile per hour winds. So now walking through the forecast track of the storm system, here is a look at 4 a.m. as we're getting ready for breakfast first thing in the morning. It does look like Lafayette sees those outer bands start stretching up northward and not quite into the New Orleans area as we head into the afternoon. Here it is. If you take a look at the eye wall, you're going to have on the west side of the eye wall those winds that will be generally moving in that northerly fashion. And on the other side, we'll have the winds that will be blowing in that counterclockwise fashion that these storms create, from southwest to northeast. Now, this part of the storm here is where we'll see the storm surge really building, because on top of the wind speeds created by the hurricane and the strength, what we're going to see is we add to it the storm motion. This is where we'll generate from the eye wall. If we draw a line where the eye wall is here and points off to the right of the eye wall, that's where the surge is going to be the greatest. Storm surge will be the greatest in those areas. So watch carefully now as we carry you into the morning hours. You'll see the heavier bands of rain pushing into Morgan City, pushing into New Orleans as we head into the time frame of 9 a.m. The eye wall is not over the area just quite yet. So let me go ahead and turn off the telestrator, move this map over just a pinch, and what you're going to see here is Houma, Franklin, those areas right there on the coast is where we're going to see that big impact. Now, we're going to have those winds really circulating around the storm system as we go through the morning hours. When will the eye wall make landfall? Boom. It looks like the best chance is going to be close to midday to 2 in the afternoon as the eye wall will be punching its way up towards Houma near Morgan City, and that looks to be the main area of impact. We could see it as far to the left as Kaplan here, where you see the white line again. That is the cone of uncertainty in the National Hurricane Center's forecast. So keep that in mind. This could wobble a little bit either way. Now, what's going to happen with regards to the storm surge? Here's a look at New Orleans. Here's a look at Lake Pontchartrain. We have a lot of rain. We'll have the south wind, and the storm surge will be pushed from winds coming from the south and from the west, southwest. That is not ideal. That's not ideal for Lake Pontchartrain and parts of New Orleans to get that flow in from the south and the east. east. If that were the case, it would be open to some more storm surge. But nonetheless, terrible conditions in and around New Orleans. And you can see that the cone of uncertainty does include New Orleans, Hammond, in that area where that storm will work. Now, as we go through the day on your Wednesday, look at Jackson, Mississippi. We're going to see those showers and thunder showers and bands work their way northward. The risk here, flooding rains. Terrible amounts of rain, over 6 inches in some spots, particularly near the coastline. We could see closer to 1 foot of rain. But once we get up into central Mississippi, tornadoes often become a concern, particularly from the panhandle of Florida through Mobile and on up into Jackson, Mississippi, with the spin associated with these landfalling hurricanes. Now, the winds will generally be decreasing as the storm works its way up into the general direction of Memphis, Tennessee, and western parts of Arkansas, including Pine Bluff and Little Rock, and that stretch there. We'll see some very heavy rain potential from this now Hurricane Francine. Again, the latest update from the National Hurricane Center, the central pressure 982 millibars, 74-mile-per-hour winds. Now, what's going to happen to the strength of this? Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of other products, again, from the National Hurricane Center. This is called a spaghetti plot. This is when we take a look at where the current location is, and we draw on model solutions from all kinds of different models. And what you're going to notice here, all these colored lines are different forecast models and their rendition of the forecast track of this storm. There's one outlier here that has it moving towards Pensacola, but most of the spaghetti in the spaghetti plot here is laying itself down on the plate from Lafayette into the New Orleans area. And that is starting to dial in on a more precise forecast track. Notice that those spaghetti plots start really fanning out as we get a little bit farther in time. The uncertainty grows in that period of time. So that's a look at the spaghetti plot. We've looked at the cone of uncertainty. We've looked at the MBM blend of model forecast. Now let's take a look at the latest tracker with the radar now on it. So now you can see what we are looking at with regard to the storm. There is the eye. It is located just straight south of Houston. We do have a couple of thunderstorms forming on the outer bands south of Crawley, south of Beaumont, and heading their way inland with this wind and this increasingly strong storm system. So that is a look at what we have going on there. I do want to take a moment and point out to you a couple of facts from the Hurricane Center here with regards to this storm system. So let's get right to the National Hurricanes Center's page here, and we'll go ahead and see their thoughts on what it is that we are noticing with the system. First thing to keep in mind when we're talking about the National Hurricane Center, they are the experts on tracking and timing storms. They issue all the watches and warnings along with the local National Weather Service offices. Stay informed if you are in the path of this dangerous storm. That said, now let's get to a look at the screen over here with a look at the National Hurricane Center. Again, we're looking out in the Gulf, and as we move this up just a pinch for you here, pardon me while I adjust the monitor here. Okay, so here we go. And I'm going to go ahead and do this because it looks like it's hovering just a little bit farther south. There is Francine. Now, when we click on Francine, you're going to get more details on the track and the threats. But this is right from the National Hurricane Center. A danger of life-threatening storm surge, Louisiana, Mississippi. That has not changed because you will be to the eye wall and points east of the eye wall when it makes landfall, the way the latest forecast is looking. Damaging and life-threatening heavy rainfall, flash flooding will be a very, very big problem. And this will extend to the west side of the eye wall as well. We'll take a look at the forecast for rainfall here just momentarily. And Francine is expected to continue to intensify. Heavy rain, considerable flash flooding, urban flooding across Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, western parts of Florida as well. Throughout the panhandle all the way through Thursday, folks. So this is going to be a wet system. Now, when we start looking at some of the details, here's a look at the storm surge watches and warnings. Storm surge, for those of you who are in the Gulf Coast, you know all about storm surge, but the wind really causes wave height to increase. This is well, I'm not going to go into that. Let's go into the watches and warnings for the storm surge. Here we go. Peak surge. Map and peak surge look at, well, pardon me while I pull this back up. Where the surge is expected to be the highest. And let me go ahead and move this up here so we can see the red line, 5 to 10 feet of storm surge. And if you look, we're looking at places like Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge all the way out to Port Fushan, and then the 4 to 7 feet that you see here extends all the way out to the mouth of the Mississippi River. So this area, and then there's Lake Pontchartrain on the north side here. You can see it highlighted in yellow. For you folks in and around the New Orleans area, this is where we're going to see 3 to 5 feet of forecast storm surge with this system working its way towards land. Now, what about aerial wind speed probabilities? Again, 74 mile per hour is that category 1 storm. This is where we have the probability of tropical force winds, tropical storm force winds that are up to 74 miles per hour. And you can see this, and they rapidly decrease as the storm system makes landfall there. So that is a look at some of the active basics with regards to the storm surge. See if we have a static. Okay, here's a look at the latest from the National Hurricane Center with regard to the cone forecast I was just showing you. Here is where we'll start to see the forecast for the intensification of the storm, and we are expecting that hurricane strength that it is now to persist until it makes landfall. Will it increase in intensity? It does look like the tropical storm force winds all the way up to hurricane force winds are to be expected by this storm system, with upwards of 100 mile per hour wind potential with the system as it makes landfall. There is the landfall zone in red, and that is where we do have hurricane warnings in place. So that includes most of the coast of Louisiana. And then in blue here, we have that tropical storm force wind up to 74 mile per hour. That extends all the way into and near the panhandle of Florida and the extreme eastern regions of coastal Texas. So that is a look at the very, very latest with Francine. Again, if you missed it, we do have a hurricane now in the Gulf. As of the 7 o'clock hour, winds have intensified. That is a look at the weather there. If you liked what you saw here, my name is Hutch Johnson. I'm a meteorologist with on-air broadcasting experience for 27 years. I've taught meteorology in the classroom to college students for 17 years, and I sure appreciate talking to you. If you liked what you saw here, please hit that like button right here on YouTube. And you can subscribe on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button. Until next time, stay tuned to me here on Hutch's Weather, and please stay safe.